Welcome back guys, this is part 3 of our Revit Basic Walls video series. If you haven't seen part 1 and part 2, then be sure to check those out and subscribe for more regularly released Revit content. So let us create one more wall type. So I'm going to go to wall architectural. I'm going to edit this type and I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to call this garden wall. And this is going to be a solid brick wall. So I'm going to go to edit the structure, and for this one I'm going to actually use the preview box. And in the preview box you can either have a plan view or you can have a section view. So I'm going to use section. You can also change the height of that preview depending on what you want to look at. So I'm going to change the height to 1.5 meters, and then I'm also going to change the build up itself. So I'm going to move the brick to the core, so I'll move that down, and then I'm going to remove the other two layers. I'm also going to change the brick to 215, which is the standard in the UK. So this is a solid brick wall, which you can see in the preview. Now one thing I'm going to do is add a sweep to the top of this wall, and that's going to act as the coping stone at the top. So let's add a sweep by selecting this sweep button here and then pressing add to add it in place. So under this menu you can change the profile, you can change the material, and you can also set where it sits on the wall. So I'm going to change the material first. So I go into the material and I'm going to use concrete, cast in place concrete. The distance I'm going to leave at 0 for now, and I'm going to set that to the top of the wall. So the from column has the option to do that. You can do it from the base or you can select the top, which is what we're going to choose. The orientation I'm going to leave as perpendicular to face, and the side I'm also going to leave at exterior. You can change it to interior, but for us it's going to be centered anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to leave that as exterior, and the offset is going to be probably half the thickness of the wall. So we can enter a formula here, equals 215, which is the wall thickness, divided by 2. So that will give us the center, 107.5. And for the cut, we either can cut the wall. So if this is sitting within the wall, it cuts into it. But in our case, it's going to sit above the wall. So this doesn't matter whether it's ticked or not. We can also select cuttable so that this item cuts along with the wall. So let's hit OK. And we can see our default profile is a square. So we're going to change that. Let's select OK for now, and we can draw our wall in place as a placeholder. As this is a garden wall, let's modify the height right now. So I select the wall and I'm going to change this to 1 meter. And let's have a look at what this looks like in the 3D view. So we click on default 3D view. Let's add some color, consistent colors, and let's change it to fine detail. Let's also change the scale again to 1:20. So that's what our garden wall looks like. The next thing we have to do is change the profile of this coping stone. So for that we need a new family. So we go to File, New Family, and then English for me. And I'm going to scroll down to Metric Profile, which is there, and then open that up. And I'm going to draw the profile for our coping stone. So line, let's select the straight lines, and I'm going to go out by equals 215 divided by 2. So that's our wall. And then I'm going to go out an extra 50 millimeters. So that's the start point for our profile. I'm going to go up by 85, and then I'm going to go up at an angle at 12 degrees. And then I'm going to delete that one. I'm going to select these two, and then I'm going to mirror draw axis. And then I'm going to trim extents, and then trim this one to that one. What I'm also going to do is draw in the drip edge. To have more clarity, let's turn on the thin lines. So I'll select that. Then I'm going to go back to create line, and then I'm going to draw a line in 25 mil to set my datum point, and then I'm going to draw a little arch in place. So let's call that 3 millimeters radius. There you go. And then you can use the split tool and you can split this line and trim tool and trim the edges before getting rid of our guideline. Let's mirror this to the other side. So select it, mirror, draw axis, mirror that to the other side, and trim the other side. And there we go. So we have our profile drawn. One thing to note about profiles is they have to be one shape and they have to be continuous. So to check if it's continuous, you can select all of the line work and make sure that all of these nodes are showing as blank circles and they don't have a solid circle. So what I mean by that is if this is back here and we select all of them, you can see the solid circles there rather than the blank circles. So let's trim that back in place, select one and select the other, and then do a selection, and we can see that these are all blank circles. So we can load this into our project. So that family is loaded into our project. It is currently called family 1, so let's rename it. So I'm going to go to families, I'm going to scroll down until I get to profiles, and then you can see family 1 here. So I'm going to select it, right click, rename. I'm going to call this coping stone, and I'm going to rename the type as well. So I'm going to right click, rename, and I'm going to call this standard. And then what we need to do is add that to our wall. So let's go to the 3D view. Let's select our wall again. We go to edit type and we can go to edit the structure, and then we can go to the sweeps, and the profile is currently set to default. So in the drop down we can select the standard coping stone and we hit apply and we can preview what it looks like. So that's not quite in the center, so we have to modify that. So I think it's minus 107.5. Okay, yeah, and then we click OK, and now we have a coping stone to the top of the wall. You can change the height of this wall and it does move with it. So if we change this to 2 meters and hit apply, that wall changes. Let's change that back to 1 meter. One thing to note is this coping stone is adjustable, so you can select the wall and you can pull any one of these endpoints to suit. The profile is in the project, so you can use it in other scenarios. So if we go to wall and we select sweep, we can edit type and then we can change the standard sweep to our coping stone again, and then hit OK. That sweep can then be applied to any wall in the project, so I can apply it to here, and then I can change the material if I wish to. Edit type, material, and we can change that to concrete cast in place as well, and then hit OK. So that's 2 different ways to add a sweep to a wall. If you're using a garden wall, then you probably want to integrate it into the wall itself. If you're using multiple different types of walls, you probably want to have that sweep as an independent object. You can modify the location of this depending on which one you choose. If you want, you can offset it from the level to a different height. So I can call this 3 meters and then that would move. Change that back to 4 meters. You can also go into the offset and you can offset it. So let's call it 100, apply, and then you can see that that moves. Or you can do it as minus 100, apply, and then that moves the other direction. So now we have a coping stone on top of the wall and we have a coping stone on top of the garden wall. Let's tidy this up a little bit and add some more decorative features with reveals into the wall. So let's go to the level 1 again. So I'm going to select the trim extents, and then I'm going to select that wall and select the other wall. So that trims that wall in place. I'm also going to mirror the full height wall to the other side. So I select it, I go to mirror, draw axis, and then I'm going to select the center point of the floor and draw that as my line of reference. And then I'm going to do the same again with the trim extents. So I select the trim extents, select one wall, select the other wall, and then that trims together. Finally, I'm just going to close that off on the other side. So with the trim extent still selected, I'm going to select my perimeter wall and select the other perimeter wall, and then the same on the other side. And once that's done, let's go back to our 3D view and we can see the garden wall on one side, and we can see that's joined quite nicely to the other walls there, and the pattern is continuous, so you can see the ends of the bricks as well as the long faces of the bricks. Let's pull the coping stone out to the end on both sides, and let's add a reveal in place. So we go to architecture, we drop down the wall button, and then we go down to wall reveal. Now wall reveals, they come in two different options. You can go to a horizontal reveal and you can go to a vertical reveal. With either one of these, they rely on a profile in much the same way that the coping stone was drawn. So let's draw the basic reveal in place, and then we can draw a profile to modify it. So I click on one wall and that reveals in place. If you continue clicking, for example, this wall that goes at a perpendicular angle, this will continue that reveal around each wall. So we can press escape out of that, and then we have our reveal in place. Now the reality is that no reveal will be that big for such a thin wall, because the wall will shear, it will break, and it will collapse. So let's do a more appropriate reveal by changing the profile. So let's make a new profile. Again, the same process. So I'm just going to speed this up for you guys. So what I'm going to do is make this profile parametric. So we go to create and we go to reference plane, and I'm going to put in a reference plane to control the height, and I'm going to put another reference plane to control the width or the depth. And then I'm going to go to align, and I'm going to select the reference plane, the line, and then lock it. After that, I'm going to select my dimensions, and then I'm going to run a dimension for the height, and then select that dimension and click on this little button to create a parameter, and I'm going to call this height, and let's leave that as a type parameter and click OK. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the width or depth. So I'm going to select my dimensions. I'm going to set reference plane to reference plane, and then I'm going to select the dimension again. Then I'm going to go to my create parameter button, and then I'm going to call this, I'm actually going to call this depth because we're trying to do a reveal. So I'm going to call this depth, and again leave it at type. So now we have a parametric shape. We can go to the family types and we can flex it. So let's call this 30 millimeters and hit apply. So that flex is okay, and let's go the other direction. Let's call this 100 millimeters and hit apply, and that flexes the other direction too. Let's standardize it at 30 millimeters, and then we can try the height. Let's go down to 100 millimeters and hit apply. That seems to flex okay. Let's go up the other direction to 170 millimeters and hit apply, and that also seems to work okay. Let's change the height back down to 100 just so that it's easily manipulated in the project, and hit apply and okay. And then we can load this into the project. So once that's in the project, we can go down to the families again, profiles, and we can rename that family 1. So right click, rename, and we're gonna call this wall reveal. And again, the type we can rename to standard. Let's go to the 3D view. Let's select the default reveal, edit type, and then the profile is currently default, and let's change that to wall reveal. So now the reveal has disappeared. If we hover over where it was placed, we can find it, and then we note that this reveal is going in the opposite direction. So this is one of the reasons why we made this parametric, and that is so that we can play around with the dimensions. We can right click where the reveal is, and then we can go to type properties, and then we can adjust the depth and the height to suit something more appropriate to what we're trying to achieve. So let's call the height 300, and then I'm going to leave the depth at 30, but I'm going to note that we have created the depth of 30. And I'll tell you why in the next step. So we click OK. So once the reveal dimensions are noted, we can then select it again, and then we can change that offset from the wall to 30 to match that depth that we noted earlier. And then when we hit apply, the wall is now cut by that reveal. So I want to do one more modification. I'm going to select the standard reveal. I'm going to right click it. I'm going to go to duplicate, and then I'm gonna call this squared box. Now this reveal, I'm going to right click and go to type properties, and then I'm going to change the height to 1 meter. I'm going to leave the depth at 30 millimeters and then hit OK. And then I'm going to go to wall reveal, and then I'm going to edit type on the existing reveal, and then I'm going to duplicate that one, and then I'm going to call that reveal squared box, and then hit OK. And then the profile, I'm going to change to the squared box profile and hit OK again. So I'm going to place that into one of our walls, and I'm going to make sure that's only in one wall, and then I'm going to escape out of that. Now this one is also flipped, so I'm going to select it and then change the offset from wall to 30 millimeters. And now we have a reveal to play with. I'm just going to go to the left hand side on my view cube here, so that I have a better idea of what that looks like. And then I'm going to drag this end point and drag the opposite end point. I want this to be 1 meter. There you go. So I've made a square. So now that that's modified, I'm going to go to the align tool again. Then I'm going to align it with a brick pattern. Now this is clipped over a little bit, but let's assume that the bricks end correctly to this left hand side of the wall. And I'm going to go for 1.5 bricks in. I'm going to tab to select my line for the brick pattern, and then I'm going to select the end of my reveal so that lines up with that. I'm also going to select the brick just below and then align the reveal in that direction too. One last thing, I'm going to make this 5 bricks across, so I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to tab and select the line and then select the reveal, and then I'm going to leave it at that. The next thing I'm going to do is actually copy this over, so I'm going to tab and select my reveal, and then I'm going to go to the copy button, and then I'm going to select the other side, and then I'm going to bring that across to about 1.5 bricks, and then I'm going to place that on the other side. So now we have 2 brick reveals which are squared off as much as possible, and we have 1 brick reveal that wraps around the whole building. And that's the end of the video. Be sure to hit the notification bell to be notified for part 4 of the Revit Basic Walls video series. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.